make decisions for you if you can't?" Carol went silent. She opened her mouth, closed it, and in that second, she realized she didn't have an answer. Not because no one loved her, but because no one knew that was their role. Carol is 68, divorced for 15 years, no children. That morning, she had simply slipped on the basement stairs. That question didn't leave her mind when she got home, and maybe it won't leave yours either. If you live alone, no spouse, no children nearby, this scene may have crossed your mind at some point. Maybe in the middle of the night after a scare. Maybe before a minor surgery. This isn't an exaggeration. This is how the system works. The healthcare system, the legal system, the banking system, all were built assuming there's someone automatic. Solo agers know that maybe there isn't. And almost everyone who tries to fix this makes the same mistake and doesn't even realize it. I'll show you what it is in a few minutes. It completely changes the outcome. Today, I'm going to show you 3 things. Why that question at the front desk is the most practical one you can ask yourself. Not the saddest. How the system fills the gap when you don't. And one action you can take in the next 48 hours on your own without having to call anyone yet. First, let me name something. If when you heard Carol's story, you felt a tightness, that, "What about me? Who would I choose?" That's not fear. That's intelligence working. Most people were never taught to think about this because most people have someone automatic. They got married, had kids, have a sibling in the same city. The entire world assumes one of those people will be there when needed. Hospital forms, banks, lawyers. They all ask, spouse or children, as the first option, always. You, whether by choice or by circumstance, ended up aging solo under that same assumption, and you were never invited to question it. And here's the problem. The system doesn't fail when you don't answer. It decides for you, and most people only realize this when it's already too late to think clearly. This video is the invitation. But before we go on, answer this for yourself, without saying it out loud. If you passed out today, who could make a decision for you in the next 2 hours? Let me tell you about James. He's 72, never married, was an engineer his whole life. He has 3 nieces he adores, but they live in 3 different cities. James would always say, out loud, "Any of them can decide for me if needed." And it never went beyond that. Just words. Last year, he had a complication during a routine surgery. He spent 2 weeks in the ICU. The nieces came and realized together that none of them had any documentation. They started arguing. Not out of malice, out of fear. Each one thought they had to take charge. None of them knew what James actually wanted. The hospital had to bring in a judge to decide who would decide. James woke up on the 13th day of hospitalization to find that decisions had already been made for him. Some he would have agreed with, others not. And the most uncomfortable part, he will never know exactly which were which. And there's Linda. Different, but tied to the same root. Linda is 64, widowed, with a son who lives in another country. In her 50s, she decided to name him as her healthcare proxy. She did the document, put it in a drawer, and never talked to him about what she actually wanted in different scenarios. When the time came, a stroke that left her unconscious for 3 days. The son was 7 time zones away and had the paper, but not the conversations. He made decisions in the dark. He carries that to this day, not because he made the wrong decision, but because he never had a way to know what the right one would have been. The 2 cases have different roots. James had no document. Linda had no conversation. And neither of them knew that document and conversation are two different things that must happen together. This is the central mistake of solo agers. It's not having no one. It's not defining who does what and what that person needs to know. And here's the moment I want you to remember. The hardest part of this isn't choosing the person. It's admitting that you need to choose. Because admitting that means admitting that one day you may not be in control. That's uncomfortable for anyone. Married, single, surrounded by family, or not. The difference is that people with automatic family can postpone this forever without consequence. You can't. And here's the point that changes everything. That lack of luxury is actually your advantage. I'll explain. When estate planning professionals talk about who decides for you, they're usually referring to 3 distinct roles. And that distinction matters a lot. It's exactly the mistake I mentioned at the beginning. Most people think there's one person, my proxy, my trusted person, my agent, and they assign one person to everything. That's the mistake, and it seems efficient until the day it doesn't work. In reality, there are 3 separate domains, each with its own document, each potentially with its own person. Now pay attention here, because this is where almost everyone gets it wrong, including highly organized people. If you understand just this part, you're already more prepared than most people your age. The first domain is healthcare, medical decisions, whether to intubate or not, whether to operate or wait, continue treatment or move to palliative care. The person in this role needs to know your values about end of life. They need to be able to handle being in a hospital room. They need to be able to say no to doctors when necessary. The second domain is financial, paying your bills while you're incapacitated, accessing your accounts, managing assets, making decisions about property. The person in this role needs to understand money at least at a basic level, and, this matters, be absolutely trustworthy with your money. And this is where many people realize, too late, that they chose the right person for the wrong role. The third domain is legal and long-term estate. What happens to your things afterward? Executing your will, managing what you leave behind. Here's the insight no generic aging channel gives you. These 3 people can be 3 different people, and in many cases, for solo agers, they should be. Why? Because the ideal person to make medical decisions at 2 a.m. might be your best friend. Emotionally stable, lives nearby, knows you well, but she's terrible with money. Meanwhile, the ideal person to handle your finances might be your accountant nephew, level-headed, organized, but he lives far away and wouldn't know whether you want resuscitation or not. Solo agers who split these roles among different people often build more robust systems than people who put everything on one person. This is where your disadvantage becomes an advantage, because you have to think about it. You end up thinking better than most people who inherit a default system. You're not just naming agents, you're building your own board of directors and distributing decision-making power. And that completely changes the level of control you have over what happens in your life. The laws around these documents vary widely by state and country. A local estate planning attorney will guide you through the right options for your situation. What I want you to leave this video with is the concept. 3 roles, 3 possible people. 1 professional conversation about what structure works for you. Because once you understand this, you stop depending on luck and start having control. Now, what happens when solo agers don't have any of the 3 roles assigned? It's not drama, it's procedure. And procedure doesn't consider preference, only absence of instruction. When an incapacitated adult has no agency documents, a hospital or bank can't just choose a family member. They have to activate the legal system, a process called, depending on the place, guardianship or conservatorship. That means a judge appoints someone to make decisions for you. That person might be a distant relative you barely know. It might be a professional assigned by the state who has never met you. They might be competent. They might not. You lose the choice. And at that point, there is no more what you wanted. There's only what the system can do. There's no more my person. There's the person the system finds. And during the time this process takes, which can be weeks, sometimes months, urgent decisions are made by institutional protocols, not by someone who loves you, not by someone who knows you'd rather die at home than spend 6 months in an ICU. That's the real consequence, not fear-mongering, silent procedure. When you talk to an estate planning attorney, and I strongly recommend this be one of the first conversations you have after this video, these are the questions solo agers specifically should bring. About document structure. How do healthcare and financial power of attorney documents work in my state? Can I name different people for each role, or does the state require a single person? Do I need a backup in case the primary person can't act? About activation. When do these documents take effect? Immediately or only when I'm declared incapacitated? Who determines incapacity? One doctor, two, a judge? About practical execution. How does the appointed person prove in the moment that they have legal authority? Where should I store the originals and who needs to know where they are? About solo agers specifically. I'm a solo ager. What scenarios have you seen go wrong for people in my situation? Is there any additional structure that makes sense for someone without nearby family, like a professional backup? These questions turn a first consultation from, "Hi doctor, what should I do?" into, "Hi doctor, I've done my homework, here are my specific questions." That changes what you get out of that conversation, and it changes the cost of the consultation, literally, because you show up prepared. Now, the concrete part. In the next 48 hours, make the list of 3. Grab a piece of paper, any piece of paper, and write down 3 names. 3 people you could name as an agent in one of the 3 roles I explained. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be final. No one is going to see this list. The goal is to take these people out of your head, where they float as abstract possibilities, and put them on paper, where they become concrete candidates. If you can't write 3 names, that's already an answer. And ignoring that answer is exactly what keeps this problem invisible. And most people stop right here. Back to Carol from the beginning. That Saturday in the ER, she didn't have an answer. The headache passed. It was just a scare. But Carol left that day different. She got home, picked up a notebook, and wrote 3 names. Her best friend, who lives 10 blocks away. Her closest cousin, who's an accountant. And her ex-husband. Because despite the divorce, they're still friends, and he knows her values better than almost anyone. None of the 3 knew yet, but now she did. She scheduled a consultation with an attorney 2 weeks later. She brought the 3 names, notes on each one, and 20-something questions written by hand. The meeting lasted 2 hours. She walked out with the skeleton of 3 documents. Carol started with the list. After the list, consider this. For each name, write 1 or 2 relevant qualities next to it. Lives nearby, knows my values, good with money, level-headed in a crisis. This helps you see who might be good for which role when you talk to a professional. And then, only then, schedule your first consultation with a local estate planning attorney. You'll walk in with a list, observations, and handwritten questions. the consultation will be 3 times more productive. Here's what I want you to take from this video, even if you forget everything else. The question, who decides for me if I can't, is not a sad question. It's the most practical question you can ask yourself. It's sad while it has no answer. Once it has an answer, with documents signed, with the person informed, with the conversation done, it becomes the opposite of sad. It becomes peace. Solo agers carry a weight most people don't even realize exists. The weight of knowing no one is automatic. That weight can paralyze you, like it paralyzed Carol for years before her fall. Or it can give you an advantage, because you know you have to act, while others postpone forever. The most powerful part of aging solo isn't being able to do everything alone. It's having intentionally built the network that supports you when you can't. That's different from luck. It's engineering. And people who think this way aren't vulnerable. They're prepared. And here's the principle that defines this playlist. Solo doesn't mean unprepared. It means intentional. The person who chose to age autonomously and made the list of 3 is often more prepared for a medical emergency than someone who is married and assumed their spouse would handle everything and never had the conversation. Preparation is the great equalizer. You now understand the system. Now it's time to grab the paper. Because delaying this doesn't solve anything. It just puts the decision in someone else's hands. This is the first video in a series I'm creating here on the channel about aging solo with intelligence. The next ones will go deeper into each document, each decision, each gap in the system. Subscribe to the Second Half Blueprint to follow along. I post every Monday. One question for you. How many names were you able to write on your list just now? 3, 2, 1, 0. Tell me in the comments. No judgment. If you were able to write at least one name, you're already ahead of most people who have never even thought about this. Your list doesn't have to be long. It just has to exist.